Imagine a peaceful coastal village bathed in the golden hues of a summer sunset, where the air is filled with the scent of salt and blooming flowers. Children laugh as they chase each other through cobblestone streets, their carefree giggles echoing through the narrow alleys. Fishermen mend their nets, sharing tales of the day's catch, their hands rough but their spirits high. But this tranquility is shattered by a blood-curdling scream that pierces the evening calm. On the horizon, sleek galleys with crimson sails appear, cutting through the waves with menacing speed. These are not traders, but pirates, the dreaded Barbary Corsairs. Panic engulfs the village as the realization dawns. Men grab whatever weapons they can find, from rusty swords to wooden clubs, ready to defend their homes. Women clutch their children close, their faces pale with fear, whispering prayers for safety. But there is no escape, no place to hide from the impending doom. The Corsairs, masters of speed and surprise, descend upon the hapless town with ruthless efficiency. They are ruthless and efficient, leaving no stone unturned in their quest for plunder. Homes are ransacked, valuables plundered. And the villagers? They face a fate far worse than death. They are bound in chains, facing a life of slavery in a distant land, torn from everything they know and love. This was the harsh reality for centuries for those living along the shores of Europe. From the sun-drenched coasts of Italy and Spain, where the Mediterranean sparkles under the sun, to the rugged shores of Ireland, where the Atlantic crashes against the cliffs, no one was safe from the reach of the Barbary Corsairs, whose very name struck fear into the hearts of coastal dwellers. Their reign of terror, spanning over 3 centuries, was marked by countless raids and abductions. From the 1600s to the early 1800s, their presence was a constant threat. This period left an indelible scar on the European psyche, a trauma that echoed through generations. Over 1.25 million Europeans, men, women, and children, were ripped from their homes. They were sold into slavery in the Islamic North African states of Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, their lives forever changed. The Barbary Corsairs were not mere pirates driven by greed. They were a unique breed of seafarers, feared and respected across the Mediterranean. They were privateers, operating with the blessing and support of the mighty Ottoman Empire, which saw them as an extension of its naval power. The Ottoman Empire, centered in the grand city of Constantinople, held sway over vast territories in North Africa, stretching its influence far and wide. The Corsairs, based in their fortified strongholds of Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, were a constant thorn in the side of Christian Europe, disrupting trade and instilling fear. Their motivations were twofold: wealth and religious zeal. The riches they amassed from their plundering expeditions were immense. The treasures plundered from European ships and coastal towns not only fueled their coffers, but also filled the treasuries of their Ottoman overlords, strengthening the empire's economy. But the Corsairs also saw themselves as holy warriors, waging jihad against the infidels. Their religious fervor was as strong as their desire for wealth. They believed they were doing God's work by enslaving Christians, capturing thousands and selling them in the bustling slave markets of North Africa. This potent mix of greed and religious fervor made the Corsairs a formidable force, feared by all who sailed the Mediterranean. They were skilled sailors and fierce fighters, their galleys swift and deadly, capable of outmaneuvering larger and more heavily armed ships. They knew the Mediterranean like the back of their hands, using their intimate knowledge of winds and currents to their advantage, striking swiftly and disappearing just as quickly. Their raids, swift and brutal, left a trail of devastation in their wake, with coastal villages burned and their inhabitants taken captive or killed. For the captured Europeans, the trauma of being seized and enslaved was compounded by a deep religious fear. They were torn from their homes, their families, and everything they knew, thrust into a world of darkness and despair. They were now in the hands of people whom they had been taught to view as enemies of their faith. This fear was not just about physical harm, but also about the spiritual peril they believed they faced. Their captors saw them not as fellow human beings, but as infidels, deserving of their fate. This perception stripped away any semblance of empathy or compassion. This dehumanization was central to the system of slavery in Barbary. It allowed the captors to treat their prisoners with unimaginable cruelty. The Europeans were stripped of their identities, their names replaced by numbers. This act of erasing their personal histories was a deliberate attempt to break their spirits. Their Christian faith, once a source of comfort, became a target for mockery and abuse. The captors took pleasure in belittling their beliefs, further deepening their despair. They were asked to convert to Islam, and those who refused faced brutal punishments. The choice was stark: abandon their faith or suffer unimaginable pain. Some were tortured, others were killed outright. The brutality knew no bounds, and the captives lived in constant fear of what might come next. Their faith, once a pillar of strength, became a source of torment. They prayed for deliverance, but their prayers often went unanswered. Their captors justified their actions through a warped interpretation of their faith. They believed that their actions were not only justified, but divinely sanctioned. They believed that enslaving Christians was not only permissible, but also a righteous act. This sense of righteousness fueled their cruelty and zealotry. This dangerous combination of zealotry and economic opportunism fueled the Barbary slave trade for centuries, turning the Mediterranean into a watery graveyard of European dreams. The sea, once a symbol of freedom and exploration, became a place of horror and despair for countless souls.